The call came on a Tuesday morning, right as I was finishing my third consecutive night shift at St. Mary's. 3 years had passed, but my hands still shook every time I saw Mom flash across my phone screen. My name is Kinley, and I learned long ago that family can wound you deeper than any stranger ever could. Your sister is dying, Mom's voice cracked. No hello, no how are you. Just straight to Amber, as always. She needs a kidney transplant. The doctors say you're the only match. I gripped the phone tighter, memories flooding back of another desperate call, the one I made to my bank 3 years ago, standing in a pediatric ICU while my 12-year-old daughter Emma fought for her life. Account cleared out? The bank representative had said. Yes, the withdrawal was made yesterday. Authorized signers, Cassandra and Derek Watson. My parents had emptied my daughter's medical fund. $60,000, gone in a single transaction. For what? My sister's dream wedding in Tuscany. Kinley? Are you there? Mom's voice pulled me back. The doctors need an answer soon. Amber doesn't have much time. I'm at work, I said flatly. I'll call you back. I hung up and slumped against the nurse's station, my scrub suddenly feeling too tight. My coworker Emerson appeared with coffee, took one look at my face, and pulled me into the break room. You look like you've seen a ghost, he said, sliding the coffee toward me. Worse, my sister needs a kidney. I laughed, but it came out hollow. And I'm the only match. The same sister whose wedding was more important than Emma's treatment? I nodded, remembering how I'd begged my parents, literally on my knees in their living room, while Emma lay in the hospital fighting an autoimmune disease that was destroying her body. Please, I'd pleaded, she needs the specialized treatment. Insurance won't cover it all. That money was for emergencies. Mom had stood there in her designer outfit, arms crossed. Your sister deserves her perfect day. You can always make more money. Dad just stared at the floor, silent as always. Meanwhile, Amber's Instagram had exploded with photos. Vintage wine tastings in Florence, designer dress fittings, 5-star hotels. Each post was like a knife in my gut while I worked double shifts, begged for loans, and slept in a hospital chair next to my dying daughter. What are you going to do? Emerson asked, snapping me back to the present. My phone buzzed again. A text from Mom. Family meeting tonight, 7 p.m. Don't be late. I showed Emerson the message. I'm going to do what I should have done 3 years ago. I'm going to make them face what they did. Kinley. His voice held a warning. Don't worry, I said, standing up. I won't do anything illegal. But I did learn something from that ICU room. Sometimes the most effective treatment requires a precise incision. I called my best friend Riley on my way home. As a legal advisor, she'd helped me document everything 3 years ago, even though we both knew I was too broken then to do anything about it. They're expecting you to roll over, Riley said, just like last time. Not happening. I pulled into my driveway, where Emma was waiting. My beautiful, healthy daughter, saved by experimental treatments I'd had to beg and borrow to afford. I have other plans. Emma hugged me as I walked in. Bad day? Aunt Amber's sick, I said, watching her face carefully. She needs a kidney transplant. Emma's expression darkened. At 12, she remembered enough. Are you going to help her? What do you think I should do? She thought for a moment, then said, I think you should do what's right. But maybe this time, right doesn't mean nice. I hugged her again, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. My brilliant, resilient girl. I need to go to Grandma and Grandpa's tonight. Will you be okay with Mrs. Martinez next door? Mom, she rolled her eyes. I'm not a baby anymore. I changed out of my scrubs and pulled out the manila folder Riley had helped me prepare months ago, just in case this day ever came. Inside was a contract, carefully worded and legally binding. My family wanted my kidney? Fine. But this time, I was setting the terms. My phone buzzed again. A text from Amber. Please come tonight. I need you. I stared at those 4 words, remembering similar texts I'd sent her from the ICU. Texts she'd left unanswered while she sampled wedding cakes and chose flower arrangements. "I'll be there," I texted back. But this time, I wasn't coming empty-handed. My parents' house looked exactly the same, a pristine colonial with perfectly manicured lawns. Mom's pride and joy. I remembered how she'd refused to let Emma play on the grass during her rare visits, afraid she'd mess up the landscaping. I checked my makeup in the rearview mirror, making sure my game face was perfect. Professional. Detached. The manila folder sat heavy in my bag. The door opened before I could knock. Mom stood there, designer outfit impeccable as always, though her eyes were red-rimmed. "You're late." "I'm exactly on time," I corrected, stepping past her into the foyer. "Where is everyone?" "Living room." I walked in to find them arranged like a tableau of family dysfunction. Dad in his usual armchair, already looking defeated. Amber on the couch, pale and thin, with her husband Rowan hovering protectively nearby. The golden couple, not quite so golden anymore. "Kinley." Amber tried to stand but wobbled. "Thank you for coming." I took the chair furthest from them all. "Let's get started." "Would you like some coffee?" Mom asked, already heading for the kitchen. "No. I want to know exactly what you're asking of me." Rowan cleared his throat, all business in his expensive suit. "The doctors have confirmed you're the only viable match in the family. The procedure is relatively straightforward. Recovery time is—" "I know the procedure," I cut him off. "I'm a nurse practitioner. What I want to know is why you think I'd agree to this." Silence fell. Amber's eyes filled with tears. "Kinley, I know things haven't been great between us, but we're family. We can start fresh." "Start fresh?" I repeated the words slowly. "Like when you started fresh with my daughter's medical fund?" "That was different," Mom snapped, returning without coffee. "Your sister needed—" "My daughter needed to live." My voice cracked, but I forced it steady again. "Emma was dying, and you stole her chance at treatment for a party." "It wasn't just a party," Amber protested weakly. "It was my wedding." "Right. Your perfect Tuscan wedding. I saw all the photos while I was working triple shifts to replace what you stole. They were beautiful." I pulled out my phone. "I saved some. Like this one. You sampling $1,000 wines while Emma was on a ventilator. Or this gem. You trying on your designer dress the same day I had to beg the hospital for a payment extension." "That's enough." Rowan stepped forward. "We're here to discuss Amber's treatment, not rehash old grievances." I laughed, the sound sharp enough to make Dad flinch. "Old grievances? My daughter almost died. The only reason she didn't is because I worked myself half to death and borrowed money I'm still paying back. Meanwhile, you all just went on with your perfect lives, like nothing happened." "Please," Amber whispered. "I'm sorry. I really am. What can I do to make it right?" "Funny you should ask." I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila folder. "I'm not here to give you my kidney. I'm here to propose terms." Mom's face reddened. "Terms? This isn't a business deal." "No," I agreed, sliding the contract onto the coffee table. "It's justice." Rowan snatched up the papers, scanning them with narrowing eyes. "This is ridiculous. You can't legally—" "I can, and I will. Everything in that contract is perfectly legal. My friend Riley, you remember her, the lawyer? Made sure of it." "What's in it?" Amber asked, reaching for the contract. Rowan tried to pull it away, but she grabbed it anyway. "Page 1 is just the beginning," I said, watching their faces. "Keep reading. There's quite a bit more." Mom started pacing. "This is extortion." "No, it's a choice. You all made yours 3 years ago. Now it's my turn." I stood up, smoothing my skirt. "Take 24 hours to read it thoroughly. If you agree to all the terms, we can proceed with compatibility testing. If not," I shrugged. "I hear dialysis has gotten much more comfortable these days." "You wouldn't really let your sister die," Dad spoke for the first time, his voice small. I turned to him, letting him see every ounce of pain and rage I'd carried for 3 years. You let my daughter almost die. What makes you think I won't return the favor? Kinley, wait, Amber called as I headed for the door. Please, can we just talk about this? I paused. Hand on the doorknob. 3 years ago, I begged you all to talk about it. Nobody wanted to hear me then. But now? I smiled, and I saw Mom take a step back. Now you'll read every word I have to say. You have 24 hours. Choose wisely. I walked out into the cool evening air, my hands steady for the first time all day. The first incision had been made. Now it was time to watch them bleed. Exactly 24 hours later, I sat in my parents' living room again, this time with Riley beside me. The contract lay open on the coffee table, its first page facing up like an accusation. $60,000, Riley read aloud, her voice crisp and professional. Plus compound interest over 3 years, emotional damages, and compensation for lost wages during Emma's extended hospital stay. Total sum, $112,000. This is absurd, Rowan sputtered. You can't possibly expect— I can and I do, I interrupted. Every penny is accounted for and legally justified. Would you like to see the spreadsheets? Mom's hands trembled as she clutched her designer handbag. We don't have that kind of money just sitting around. Sell something, I suggested. The vacation house in the Hamptons, maybe? Or those diamond earrings you wore to Amber's wedding, the ones that cost more than Emma's first round of treatment? Kinley, Amber whispered from her spot on the couch. She looked worse than yesterday. Dark circles under her eyes. Please, we can work something out. We are working something out. Page 1 is just the financial restitution. Shall we move on to page 2? Riley flipped the page with deliberate slowness. Dad made a choking sound as he read the next clause. A public apology, Riley clarified for everyone. Notarized statements from each family member, detailing their role in misappropriating funds meant for a critically ill child. To be published in all local newspapers and posted on all social media platforms. Absolutely not, Mom shot to her feet. We have a reputation to maintain. So did I said quietly. I was the responsible one, remember? The steady one. The one who always did the right thing. Until suddenly I was the one begging doctors not to stop my daughter's treatment because I couldn't make the payments. We didn't know it would be that bad, Dad muttered. Bull. I pulled out my phone, opened my emails. Here's my message begging you for help. Here's Mom's response. Amber's wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event. Emma will understand when she's older. She was 12, Dad. 12 and fighting for her life. Rowan paced the room, his expensive shoes clicking on the hardwood. This is blackmail. No, Riley corrected. This is a legally binding agreement between consenting adults. Kinley is under no obligation to donate her kidney. She's simply stating her terms. Terms that would destroy us socially, Mom cried. Like you destroyed me financially? I stood up, walked to the window. Outside, the garden Mom loved so much was in full bloom. You know what the worst part was? Not the money. Not even the betrayal. It was watching Amber post those wedding photos while I sat next to Emma's hospital bed, listening to her struggle to breathe. Each smiling snapshot was like you all saying, "See, we made the right choice." Amber started crying softly. Rowan moved to comfort her, but she pushed him away. The apology goes public before any medical procedures begin, Riley continued. Non-negotiable. What about my clients? Rowan demanded. My business partners? This would ruin us. I turned back to face them. Funny how reputation matters now that it's yours on the line. I'll do it, Amber said suddenly. What? Mom gasped. I'll sign the apology. I'll post it everywhere. Amber's voice strengthened. I deserve it. We all do. Rowan grabbed her arm. Don't be ridiculous. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking clearer than I have in years. Amber pulled away from him. We did this. We let it happen. And now we're going to face it. Mom collapsed into a chair. This will follow us forever. Good, I said. Because Emma's medical debt will follow me forever. Her trauma will follow her forever. Seems fair that you all get a souvenir too. Fine, Dad said quietly. We'll pay the money. We'll write the apologies. Just, please help your sister. I shared a look with Riley, who nodded slightly. That's still not everything. There's one more page. There's more? Mom's voice rose hysterically. Oh yes. I picked up the contract and turned to the final page. This is the part where we discuss legacy. Because that's what this was all about, right? Amber's perfect wedding, her perfect life, her perfect story. Well, now we're going to write a new story. What does that mean? Rowan demanded. Rowan, please. I held up the last page, letting them see the detailed plans, the architectural renderings. It means we're going to talk about the Emma Watson Pediatric Care Wing, and you're all going to pay for it. The room fell silent, except for Mom's sharp intake of breath. I smiled, remembering Emma's words from yesterday. Right doesn't always mean nice. She was absolutely correct. You want us to build a hospital wing? Mom's voice hit a pitch I hadn't heard since I announced my pregnancy at 19. Have you lost your mind? Not build, I corrected, spreading the architectural plans across the coffee table. Fund. St. Mary's will handle the construction. You'll provide the money and ongoing maintenance costs. Rowan snatched up the budget sheet, his face reddening. $2 million? This is insane. Actually, Riley interjected, it's quite reasonable for a specialized pediatric care unit. We've already discussed preliminary terms with the hospital board. You went to the board, Dad's voice cracked. Without consulting us? Like you consulted me before emptying Emma's account? I kept my voice level. Besides, they were quite interested, especially when I mentioned the potential PR nightmare of refusing a dedicated pediatric wing because of a family's complicated history. Mom stood up, shaking. This isn't about Emma anymore. This is revenge. No, Mother. This is about legacy. I walked over to the mantel, picked up one of the dozens of framed photos of Amber. Her graduation, her engagement, her perfect wedding. You've always been obsessed with appearances, with creating the perfect story. Well, here's your chance to be the generous, philanthropic family you pretend to be. We can't afford this, Rowan insisted. Sell the vacation house, I suggested again. Liquidate some assets. I'm sure you can figure it out. You were creative enough when it came to financing that wedding. Amber hadn't spoken since I revealed the final clause. She sat there, staring at the architectural renderings, tracing the proposed layout with her finger. It's beautiful, she whispered finally. What? Mom spun toward her. The design? The children's play areas? The family rooms? Amber looked up at me. You really thought this through. I spent 3 months in a pediatric ward with Emma. I know exactly what families need. I picked up another rendering. See these private consultation rooms? That's where parents get the worst news of their lives. These family suites? Where they sleep when they can't bear to leave their sick child. I designed every inch of this place, with money you knew we'd have to provide, Rowan snapped. Yes. I met his gaze steadily. Because legacy should cost something. Mom started pacing again, her designer heels clicking frantically. This is extortion. We could fight this in court. Riley laughed for the first time. Please do. I'd love to present evidence of your financial fraud, along with documentation of how you used stolen medical funds for a luxury wedding. I'm sure the media would love that story. Mom, Amber's voice was stronger now. Stop. Just stop. Honey, you're not thinking clearly. The medication. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. Amber struggled to her feet. We did this. All of us. We watched Kinley beg for help. and we turned away. We spent that money on flowers that died in a week, on wine we barely remember drinking, on a marriage that... She glanced at Rowan, then away. We deserve this. Don't be dramatic. Rowan reached for her, but she stepped back. Remember when Emma was in ICU? Amber turned to Mom and Dad. Remember how Kinley called, and we were all too busy with wedding plans? I was trying on my 4th designer dress while my niece fought for her life. That's different, Mom protested weakly. How? I asked softly. How is it different? No one answered. The wing will be completed within 18 months, Riley continued. All business. Your names will be listed as donors, of course. The press will love it. Wealthy families' generous gift to sick children. You'll probably even get a tax write-off. And if we refuse? Rowan demanded. I picked up my bag. Then you'd better hope Amber's body accepts dialysis long-term. I hear the success rates aren't great. You'd really let me die? Amber's voice trembled. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Behind the designer clothes and perfect makeup, she seemed small, scared. Just like Emma had been. You all let my daughter suffer, I said quietly. The only difference is, I'm giving you a choice. Sign the contract, fund the wing, make the apologies. Or don't. But either way, you'll finally face what you did. I'll sign, Amber said immediately. Amber, no, Rowan started. Yes. She grabbed the contract. Where's a pen? Riley produced one, along with a notary stamp. All parties need to sign, including you, Mr. and Mrs. Watson. Mom had stopped pacing. She stood by the mantel, surrounded by perfect family photos that now seemed more like evidence than memories. The press will crucify us, she whispered. Maybe, I agreed. But at least sick children will have a better place to heal. Isn't that worth more than your reputation? Dad reached for the pen first. His hand shook as he signed. One by one, they added their names. With each signature, I felt something inside me shift. Not healing exactly, but something close to justice. The incision was complete. Now came the real surgery. The hospital cafeteria was nearly empty when Amber found me there 3 days later. I was on my lunch break, reviewing patient charts when she slid into the seat across from me, looking even more exhausted than before. You're not supposed to be here, I said, not looking up. Your next dialysis appointment isn't until tomorrow. I came to talk. She pushed a paper coffee cup toward me. Peace offering? I finally met her eyes. Coffee won't fix this. I know. She wrapped her arms around herself, shivering despite the warm hospital air. Rowan left me this morning. That made me look up. What? Said he couldn't handle the public humiliation. Said I should have fought harder against the contract. She laughed bitterly. Apparently, his reputation is worth more than my life. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt nothing. I'm sorry. Are you? She leaned forward. Isn't this what you wanted? To destroy everything? I wanted justice. No, she shook her head. You wanted revenge. And you got it. Mom hasn't left the house in days. Dad's drinking again. Rowan's gone. You won. And you're dying, I added quietly. Yes. She pushed up her sleeve, showing the bruises from dialysis. Unless you've changed your mind about the conditions? Have you changed your mind about signing them? I already signed. But you haven't posted the apology yet. None of you have. Amber's face crumpled. I tried. I wrote it out 10 times. But every time I go to post it, I remember that day, when they took the money. I set down my pen. What do you mean, they? Mom and Dad. She wouldn't meet my eyes. They never actually told me they were taking the money. Not until after. You expect me to believe that? I was trying on dresses when Mom came in, all excited. Said they'd handled the wedding budget issues. I didn't know what she meant until later, when I overheard them talking. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I told them not to. I begged them to put it back. But you still took the trip, I said coldly. Still had your perfect wedding, because Mom said it was too late. The vendors were paid, the contracts signed. She said, Amber wiped her eyes. She said Emma would be fine, that you were just being dramatic. And you believed her? I wanted to. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I wanted to believe everything would be okay. That Emma would get better, that you'd forgive us, that we'd all be family again. I was a coward. My pager buzzed. A patient needed me. I started gathering my things. Wait, Amber grabbed my wrist. I have something to show you. She pulled out her phone, opened her banking app. Look. I glanced at the screen. A transfer confirmation. Everything in her personal account moved to a new one. What is this? My portion of the repayment. It's not much, only about $30,000. But it's everything I have left after Rowan froze our joint accounts. She pushed the phone toward me. I know it doesn't make up for anything, but I want you to have it now, before anything happens. Why? Because you're right. Legacy should cost something. She stood up shakily. I'm posting my apology tonight. The real story, everything. Not because of the contract, but because it's right. My pager buzzed again, more urgently this time. I have to go, I said, standing. I know. She stepped back. But Kinley? That day in the hospital, when you were begging for help? It's my biggest regret. Not the wedding, not Rowan leaving, but failing you and Emma when you needed me. I shouldered my bag, fighting the sudden tightness in my throat. Regret doesn't change what happened. No, she agreed, but maybe it can change what happens next. I left her there in the cafeteria, hurrying to my patient's room, but her words followed me, echoing in my head as I worked. That evening, my phone lit up with notifications. Amber's social media post was live, a long, raw confession that spared no one, least of all herself. The comments were already flooding in, a mix of shock, support, and condemnation. Emma found me staring at the post in our kitchen. Mom? She peered over my shoulder. Is that Aunt Amber's apology? Yes. Is it real? Or just because of the contract? I thought about Amber in the cafeteria, about the transfer confirmation, about the way her voice broke when she talked about regret. I don't know, I admitted. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then, sometimes the bravest thing isn't being strong. Sometimes it's admitting you were wrong. I looked at my daughter, wondering when she'd gotten so wise. When did you learn that? She smiled. From you. The hospital boardroom felt too small for the tension it contained. My family sat on one side of the long table, while hospital administrators and architects filled the other. I stood at the front, pointing to the projected plans for the Emma Watson Pediatric Care Wing. The private consultation rooms will have sound dampening, I explained, clicking to the next slide. When parents receive difficult news, they deserve privacy for their grief. And the funding is secured? Dr. Martinez, the chief administrator, looked pointedly at my parents. Mom nodded stiffly. After Amber's viral post, they'd had no choice but to follow through. The local papers had picked up the story, and suddenly the Watson family's generous donation was public knowledge. The first installment has already been transferred, Riley confirmed, sliding documents across the table. The rest will follow according to the construction schedule. Excellent, Dr. Martinez smiled. Then we can begin next month. The community response has been overwhelming. Speaking of community response, I clicked to the final slide. I'd like to propose one last addition to the plans. Rowan, who'd been forced to attend as Amber's medical proxy despite their separation, straightened in his chair. The contract didn't mention additional requirements. This isn't a requirement, I said. It's an opportunity. The slide showed a teenage advisory board. young people who'd survived serious illness, offering insight into pediatric care from a patient's perspective. I'd like Emma to serve as the inaugural member when she turns 18, I said, along with other survivors who understand what these families are going through. Mom's hand flew to her throat. You want Emma involved in this? It's her legacy, too. I met her eyes. Unless you object to her name being associated with the family? The barb hit home. Mom flinched. I think it's perfect, Amber said softly from her seat. The dialysis was taking its toll. She looked gray, exhausted. Emma should be part of this. The board enthusiastically supports the idea, Dr. Martinez added. Having young voices in pediatric care planning is invaluable. I watched my parents exchange glances. They'd lost all control of the narrative, and they knew it. Their perfect family image had been replaced by something real, messy and painful, but honest. There's one more thing. Amber struggled to her feet. I want to volunteer. If I recover. The dialysis unit needs people who understand what patients are going through. Amber, Rowan protested, your condition is exactly why I should do it. She turned to me. If you'll let me. The room fell silent, waiting for my response. I studied my sister's face, remembering her confession in the cafeteria, her public apology that had started an avalanche of truth. That would be up to the volunteer coordinator, I said finally. But I wouldn't object. Relief flooded her features. Then she swayed slightly, grabbing the table for support. I think we should wrap this up, Dr. Martinez said, noting Amber's condition. We'll proceed with the plans as presented. Construction begins next month. As everyone gathered their things, Dad approached me for the first time since the contract signing. The advisory board? He said quietly. That was well thought out. I learned from experience, I replied. Sometimes the people who know most about healing are the ones who had to fight for it. He nodded, then hesitated. Your mother and we've been talking about selling the house. I raised an eyebrow. The sacred family home? It's too big for us now. And with the wing's maintenance costs, he shrugged, maybe it's time for a change. Before I could respond, Emma burst into the room. She was supposed to wait outside, but patience had never been her strong suit. Did they approve it? The advisory board thing? She bounced on her toes, excitement radiating from her. Yes, I couldn't help smiling, though you'll have to wait a few years to join. Worth it. She turned to Amber, who was gathering her things slowly. Will you really volunteer, Aunt Amber? Amber's eyes filled with tears. It was the first time Emma had spoken to her directly in years. If I can, she said softly. If I get the chance. Emma looked at me then, and I saw the question in her eyes. The same wisdom from our kitchen conversation seemed to hang between us. Sometimes the bravest thing is admitting you were wrong. But sometimes the bravest thing is choosing to heal. I pulled out my phone and pulled up my calendar. Your next dialysis session is tomorrow at 9, I said to Amber. I'll have the transplant evaluation paperwork ready. The room went still. Really? Amber whispered. The contract terms have been met. I picked up my bag. Don't make me regret this. Emma hugged me fiercely. Over her head, I watched Amber sink back into her chair, crying silently. Mom had turned to the window, but I could see her shoulders shaking. Dad just stood there, looking lost and relieved and guilty all at once. The pediatric wing would be built. The apologies had been made. The money would be paid. But maybe, just maybe, something else could be built too. The pre-op room was eerily quiet at 5 a.m. Amber lay in one bed, I in the other, both of us being prepped for surgery. The consent form sat unsigned on the table between us. Last chance to back out, the transplant coordinator said, offering me a pen. Emma squeezed my hand. She'd insisted on being here, saying she needed to see this through. My brave girl, always facing things head on. Mom? she whispered. Are you sure? I looked across at Amber. Mom and Dad weren't here. Hospital policy only allowed one visitor per patient during prep. Amber had no one. Rowan hadn't returned her call since the divorce papers arrived. I'm sure, I said, taking the pen. Wait, Amber called out weakly. Can I talk to Kinley alone for a minute? The coordinator nodded. 5 minutes. Then we need those forms. Emma kissed my cheek and followed her out. The door clicked shut, leaving Amber and me in suspended silence. Remember when we were kids? Amber's voice was barely audible. How I used to crawl into your bed during thunderstorms. You were terrified of lightning, I said. You never turned me away. Not once. She turned her head to face me. Even when I was horrible to you, you were always there when it really mattered. Until I wasn't. Because we betrayed you. Her monitors beeped steadily, marking the rhythm of our conversation. We broke something precious, and I don't just mean the money. I fingered the consent form. Why did you let them do it? Because I was weak. Tears slid down her face. Because it was easier to pretend Mom was right, that everything would be fine. Because I'd spent my whole life being the favorite, and I didn't know how to say no to them. And now? Now I know what it costs to be their perfect daughter. She laughed bitterly. Funny how quickly perfect fades when you really need help. The coordinator poked her head in. 3 minutes. I picked up the consent form, reading words I already knew by heart. Standard risks: infection, bleeding, complications. Possible outcomes: success, rejection, failure. I don't deserve this, Amber whispered. No, I agreed. You don't. Then why? I thought about Emma's words from months ago. Sometimes the kindest revenge is saving someone. I thought about the pediatric wing taking shape across town, about legacy and healing and the weight of choices. Because 3 years ago, I learned what it feels like to watch someone you love suffer and be unable to help. I met her eyes. I don't want to be the person who chooses not to help when they can. Even after everything we did? Especially after everything you did. I picked up the pen. Because this way, every time you look at that scar, you'll remember. Every time you tell this story, you'll have to explain why your sister had to save your life after you nearly let her daughter die. She flinched. That's the revenge part, isn't it? That's the truth part. I signed my name with steady hands. The revenge was the contract. This is something else. The door opened. Emma came back in, followed by the medical team. She took one look at the signed form and hugged me fiercely. You're the strongest person I know, she whispered. No, baby. I held her close. I learned strength from you. The nurses began their final preparations. IV lines were checked, monitors confirmed, surgical sites marked. Through it all, Amber watched me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not guilt, not gratitude, but something like awe. Kinley, she called as they prepared to wheel us out. Thank you. Not just for this, but for showing me what real strength looks like. Don't thank me yet, I said. You still have to live with it. I know. She managed a small smile. Maybe that's the point. Emma walked between our beds as far as she was allowed. At the OR doors, she stopped, suddenly looking young and scared. I'll be right here when you wake up, she promised. Both of you, she added, glancing at Amber. The last thing I saw before the anesthesia took hold was Emma's face, wearing the same determined expression she'd had during her own hospital stays. My daughter, who taught me that survival sometimes means fighting, sometimes means forgiving, and sometimes means doing both at once. As consciousness faded, I thought about scars, the ones that show and the ones that don't. About how some wounds need to be reopened before they can truly heal. About how sometimes the greatest victory isn't in winning the fight, but in choosing when to end it. The darkness took me then, but I wasn't afraid. I'd already done the hardest part. I'd chosen to let go. The ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Emma Watson Pediatric Care Wing drew a larger crowd than anyone expected. Local media jostled for position as Emma and I stood before the gleaming new entrance, oversized scissors in hand. "Ready?" I whispered to her. She nodded, grinning. Behind us, the assembled crowd waited. Hospital staff, donors, community members, and my family, all carefully arranged for the photos. "Together," Emma said, and we cut the ribbon. Camera flashes exploded. Dr. Martinez stepped forward to make her speech about community support and medical advancement, but I was watching Amber. She sat in the front row, still thin, but healthier now, her transplant scar hidden beneath a modest blouse. She caught my eye and gave a small nod. Later during the reception, I found her in one of the new consultation rooms, running her hand along the sound-dampening walls. "First day of volunteer training tomorrow," she said without turning around. "I'm terrified." "Good." I leaned against the doorframe. "Fear means you understand what's at stake." She turned to face me. "The dialysis patients, they've been asking about my story, about why I'm volunteering. And what do you tell them? The truth. That my sister saved my life after I nearly destroyed hers. That sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who teach you how to be better." From down the hall came the sound of Emma's laugh. She was giving tours to potential teen advisory board members, showing them the spaces she'd helped design. "She's amazing," Amber said softly. "You did that. You raised her to be strong despite everything we put you through." "She raised herself. I just gave her the space to do it." Mom appeared in the doorway, looking uncomfortable in her simple dress. She'd sold most of her designer clothes to help fund the wing. "The photographers want family photos." "Coming," I said, but didn't move. "Kinley?" Mom hesitated. "The plaque. It's beautiful." I'd insisted on the wording myself, not just the Emma Watson Pediatric Care Wing, but the subtitle, "Where Healing Begins with Truth." "It's not too late, you know," Amber said suddenly, "to be a real family." "We are a real family," I replied. "Just not the kind you pretended to be before. This is what real looks like, messy and complicated and honest." "I'll take it," she said. "After everything, I'll take any version of family you're willing to give." Emma bounded into the room. "Mom, come see. The teen lounge is perfect, and Dr. Martinez says we can start the advisory board meetings early if we get enough members." "Show me," I said, letting her pull me along. She led us through the wing, past the private consultation rooms where bad news could be delivered with dignity, past the family suites where parents could stay close to their children, past the play areas designed for kids who needed to remember how to be kids. Dad stood in the main lobby, studying the donor wall where the Watson family name was prominently displayed. "Your mother sold her jewelry collection," he said quietly as we approached. "All of it. Even her wedding rings." "I know. We're different now." He touched the wall gently. "Because of you. Because you forced us to be." "No," I corrected him. "Because you finally chose to be." The evening wound down. Visitors filtered out, leaving just family behind. We stood in the lobby, Mom, Dad, Amber, Emma, and me, looking at what we'd built together. Not just the wing, but something else. Something harder. "What happens now?" Mom asked. "Now we do the work," I said. "You keep funding this place. Amber volunteers. Emma plans her advisory board. And we remember why we're here. And us?" Amber touched her side where the transplant scar lay. "What happens to us?" Emma slipped her hand into mine. "We keep healing," she said. "Like the plaque says. With truth." I looked at my family. Really looked at them. Mom in her simple clothes, humbled but trying. Dad, standing straighter now that he'd found his voice. Amber, marked by scars inside and out but finally facing forward. And Emma, my brilliant girl, who'd shown me that the strongest revenge isn't destruction, but reconstruction. "Truth," I agreed. "One day at a time," Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows through the wing's windows. Tomorrow, these halls would fill with families facing their worst fears. They'd cry in the consultation rooms, sleep in the family suites, watch their children fight battles no child should face. But they wouldn't be alone. And neither were we. Not anymore.